This is the second day of the March 90-70 retreat at Springwater. Maybe something should have been added yesterday to listening, talking about listening, wondering how is one listening to a talk? How are we listening to each other, not just during a talk? In our daily life, our daily conversations. Is there in this listening already a fear of what the person may be saying? That may be critical or destructive, or just merely questioning of the things that I'm holding on to or identified with. Or reversely, is there a longing, a wanting to hear confirmation of what one believes or of what one is attached to? In either case, or if there is any prejudice, toward, for, against, the listening is not completely open, is it? It's not clear, naive, if you will, innocent. We do protect ourselves in our listening. And this is why we misunderstand each other. We don't hear what someone says because we're afraid of what he or she may say, or we want him or her to say something that assures us, makes us feel secure in our system of beliefs or attachments. So can one be mindful of that in listening? I don't know how that operates, but sometimes thinking about this, mentioning it, talking about it, has some kind of an effect of maybe becoming aware that one is listening with fear and maybe listening freely, realizing one really wants to hear what someone is saying and putting aside the fear or the want of something or for something. It's amazing when one catches oneself. One was so sure one heard a person say this or that, and it's not at all what someone said, but for that we have to discuss with each other. And be open for this discussion. To be open if somebody asks, why did you say that? And then also be open to hear from the person one has just asked, did I say that? Maybe I didn't say that. Let's start freshly, not try to now argue what was said or not, because our memories are very inaccurate, selective, in accordance with our fears and wishes. They're very selective, limited. But we can start fresh to discuss whatever it was that one is questioning or opposing or challenging. Then if this discussion takes place in all openness, then there's liveliness and friendship among us. We don't have to defend ourselves or attack each other. We can clarify, inquire together. Not based on past sayings, but based on present looking. There's great energy and great joy in this if one can do that together and need not feel defensive. or angry at what somebody said. If there's feeling of anger, we can question together, why does one get angry if something is said? Not, you shouldn't be angry, I shouldn't get angry, but why? Let's explore it. If one has the fixed opinion, it's good to feel anger, it's good to express anger, then one will not be exploring. Then one will just look for evidence to support one's theory. Also yesterday, in talking about authority, I did not say something about the inner authority. I was glad somebody brought it up in a meeting, saying, we do need to follow our own inner authority, don't we, or something like that. Let me say here, parenthetically, I do not quote what people say verbatim. I'm not capable of doing that. Don't have a reliable tape recorder up here. So what is brought up as a question or a statement made in a meeting is not verbatim, may not be accurate, completely accurate. Also, sometimes it is the synthesis of several things that several people have said, so it may come out here as a new statement or question to be looked at. So please don't feel misunderstood or misquoted just because this memory does not function accurately with regard to what happened in meetings. If you feel the question has changed dramatically, then look at a new question. We're looking at new things all the time. And we may have, if meetings proceed the way they have, we may have a meeting every day to clarify and look further or start from the beginning. So, what about this inner authority, which seems to be sort of the solution to following outer authority? Dependency on other people, other opinions, other authorities it can be replaced by following one's own inner authority. But we have to know what it is we're following. What do we mean by my own inner authority? There's a lot of talk about that. Feeling empowered to follow one's own inner authority. But what is it that we're referring to as inner authority? Is it, again, what we remember having heard, read, experienced ourselves? The authority of memory, which, as we've just stated, is very limited and very likely selective and not completely accurate. There's a place for going on what we remember, what we have learned. The whole academic field is based on that, the teaching in that, on being an authority, having read a lot, having done a lot of experimentation, and then teaching, lecturing from memory of all of that. Although a good teacher who is very much alive will also talk out of the present moment. And as we just read in the discussion we mentioned earlier, where Krishnamurti and several people, among them a very well-known theoretical physicist, participate. He says that in the scientific approach, every statement must be in the danger of being false. Must be in danger of being false, which means don't believe it. Be open to its being different. It may hold for a while, it may be a working hypothesis, but it may be replaced by some further findings or discovery. So can our statements too be in the danger of being false? Then it behooves us to look for ourselves right now, what is so. And we're not talking right now about theoretical physics or biology or earth science. There, one may not be able to. One can just hear the rain, but that's not earth science. It's just the dripping of it, or the snow, the greening of the grass that can be seen now. But about ourselves and our relationship with each other. What do we think we are? What do I think you are, or they are, or us, we are? All of this is based on ideas, memory, in danger of being false. Because the image of myself, you, them, or us, is an abstraction and based on a lot of temporary evidence, temporary occurrences, folklore, collective and individual prejudice, or worship. So what is this inner authority if it is not memory? Past experiences one may have had, very blissful or releasing experiences of feeling no separation from this whole whatever it is. But is that a memory right now? And then talking about it, making propaganda for it, or whatever one may be doing with it. Is that following one's own authority or following memory? And with a motive. Not denying that there have been experiences. And yet, now, if this state of no separation isn't taking place right now, non-separation is a memory, is an idea. And why make that into an authority? And speak authoritatively from memory. Maybe we can discuss this further, what is meant by following one's own authority. Maybe the words are not directly representing what one means, maybe meaning looking for oneself, not believing what someone else says, finding out for oneself, inquiring freely, not thinking, I am not capable of doing this, I have to follow people who are capable, who are more capable than myself, to look and to pronounce. Is that what is meant? To look for oneself, to listen, even if it feels as though eyes and ears are plugged, then can that come into awareness? The feeling of closedness. There's no limit to what can be seen. The resistance, several people have brought up feeling a strong resistance at times to sit, to explore further. What is resistance? Why not explore that? It's there. It pervades the body and mind. Feeling defensive, feeling closed up, feeling numb. We wouldn't be able to say these things if there was not some awareness of this being so. So, what is it? Can one sit, walk, eat, lie down with it? Allow this to be there. Not like something shunned and denied, but something that's part of the whole thing. Of being, of consciousness, of this world, this day, this moment. It's a different attitude, isn't it, from denying or shutting off or opposing, criticizing, being judgmental of resistance or closedness. The inability, one thinks, to hear openly. Can one see the thought, I can't do it? Can one hear that? As one talks to oneself, sometimes thoughts are very hidden, very covered up. Unconscious, subconscious, implicit, all these words have been used. So can there be an increasing sensitivity to these hidden thoughts about what I am or am not, what I can do or can't do, and questioning all of that? What is it based on? We assume it's the truth because we've always been told and always thought this way. Or that we're very good at something. It's the other side. To become aware of these hidden attitudes toward oneself and others that are so taken for granted. That's partly what makes them hidden. We think this is so. And suddenly it comes into view and one can question it. And one may not have to go on with this idea. It's in danger of being false. Then, are the ears open to hear the rain, the drip, the sound of breath? One has heard so much about spiritual development, spiritual advancement, the beginner and the advanced, the length of the path, time it takes to travel, to arrive, to get someplace. All of this can be part of feeling closed, incapable, or not yet, but maybe later, and postponing, looking and listening now. Can one begin to sort out what is idea, even though it is very lofty? Just because an idea is lofty does not make it any different from any other idea. The idea of eventual, full enlightenment. Let's look at it right now. Or first enlightenment or intermediate enlightenment. It's all idea, isn't it? And if one has had something, somebody labeled an enlightenment experience for one, or maybe one labeled it oneself, what is it now? Is it a memory? Or is there the aliveness of looking and listening without the separation of memory and future, past and future? What I was, what I'm going to be, which is all based on thought. Creating this enormous time between what was and what will be. and weighing on us. Time is a tremendous burden. That time created by thought, what I will eventually be based on what I heard in the past. And at the same time, it's also a tremendous incentive. Somebody mentioned to me that seeing the real nature of this incentive of the future, what I'm going to be, become, the importance or purpose of my life, seeing the nature of that and what it is really made up of, and not being able to continue with that whenever it comes up, almost causes grief in me, grieving, sorrowing for something lost. But then we have to look at why grieve about it. Because one has held on to it so long and derived borrowed energies. There's still thought involved, isn't there? I don't have this anymore. The insight that it is thought is genuine. Or it's just thinking about it. And then thinking about it makes one sad. Like thinking about any loss brings about grief and sadness. Please, we're not saying don't grieve, don't be sad. Just let's look at what's happening when sadness wells up. What triggered it? What's the whole network that's involved? It's a very complex thing. What I had, what I hope to have, and the whole memory of that, the stories, which will now not come out the way I've always spun them out to come out, and the good feelings I have derived from spinning out the story of my life into the future. And then the sadness, like crying, tears in a movie when the hero or heroine die. One has been attached to that. One has wanted that to continue. And the loss of it, even just in a movie, brings on tears, deep feelings of grief. Maybe one was identified with this person, sees oneself dying. This is all open to looking into, discovering about. In a simple way. Simple meaning not with a motive of becoming a better person, or just because it's happening. And why shouldn't we be aware, truthfully aware of what is happening in and around ourselves, rather than live in illusion, day after day, year after year, lifetime after lifetime. So is it possible, as outer authority is more understood and less followed, to also understand more about this inner authority? And can it empty out so that there is openness to look now? Not that memory ceases, it doesn't cease. Memory operates. But it is a different thing, accessing memory or memory running this organism robot-like, mechanically, automatically, unawares. people say in sitting, there's more and more awareness of what goes on, all the thoughts and the feelings, the ups and downs. But it never ceases, never ends. It just goes on and on and on. Even though I see it, but that doesn't seem to affect it at all. Can one also see in addition to thoughts, feelings, emotions, ups and downs going on and on, also see the wish that it wouldn't go on? That's part of that stream. The wish that it would be different, expecting it to cease, the basis on which one expects it, what one has heard somebody say or what one has read in a book. Can all of that be part of this vast river mind scene? Awareness of it. The judgments, the expectations, the wants, the fears, the whole thing, without making a thing out of the individual instant or aspect. Not stopping. Oh, I wish this was different. If that stopping takes place, can it too come into awareness? The mourning, the moaning, feeling sorry for oneself or calling oneself names like loser or not as good as so-and-so. This is not for me. Can all of that be revealed as an ongoing process? This is this work. For there to come into being a vast listening and looking that is not beset with judgment. That is as open as the sky. Vast meaning there's room for everything in it. Not to make an image of vastness, I didn't mean that. There's room for everything. For resistance and discouragement and despair and hope. Just to see it. Not to be caught up in the content of the words and feelings that manifest what we call despair or hope. But just to see the whole thing, feel it. And not to get stuck on seeing or listening. The senses are one. They're not separate when we don't call them this or that. They operate together. When the intellect doesn't divide the sound and the object of sound and the sight and the object of seeing and the reactions to it. We will talk more and more about this as the days go on. So, can all of this be comprehended is a nice word. Hold it all in the hands. Put one's arms around it, as it were. Vulnerability, pain, defensiveness, feelings of violence, anger. And not stop and say, this wrecks it all. Too bad, I've blown it. I've gotten angry again. And if that happens, which it does, will one wake up to it, that it just has happened, and see it as part of this vast stream of thinking, feeling, emoting, which we call mind or consciousness, including the body, of course. It's not separate from all of this. It's so intertwined one can't even separate out what is body and what is mind. Many people say, I have the feelings and emotions and pain, but I don't see any thought that triggered it. It's because thought is so much faster, come and gone, or hidden, but the bodily reactions and manifestations are slower, have slower pace. And if we don't like them and think we don't like them, we deepen that feeling. We strengthen it. Strengthen whatever body feelings go with anxiety or fear. If we are afraid of that, afraid of the symptoms of fear, that enhances the symptoms of fear. That can be observed very clearly. One thought, oh, what's going to happen to me? Is it going to be like last time, or is it going to get worse? And more palpitation or whatever. Sweat or shortness of breath, tightness in the throat or gurgling in the intestines. You see, it's all open to investigation, to exploration. One doesn't have to carry this body to a doctor to do it for one. One can do this oneself, by which I have to be very careful. I'm not talking against doctors. There's a place for them. But a good doctor, there are few springing up, will discuss this with one. Won't just sit on the high stool and talk down to one, but will discuss. Unfortunately, I have very little time. Well, because how would I know? I have to ask the person questions if I were a doctor. You can't just diagnose this thing immediately. And to have a doctor with whom one can talk on the same level, maybe still a very rare thing, but it's very good, because there's knowledge there that one doesn't have about the organs and anatomy and possible diseases, misfunctioning and so forth. So I was not talking about disease and to recommend it one diagnose this oneself. I'm not even recommending, I'm just looking. We're looking together at this body manifesting symptoms of fear, and more thought about it creating deeper fear or more symptoms, and then the anxiety about the symptoms creating more of them, lasting more. This is all open to investigation or to observation. If a sequence like this has been followed of fear, physical symptoms, creating more thoughts, strengthening the symptoms or creating a few more, if this series of happenings, this stream of happenings is observed, which is easier in a retreat where one is sitting, has time, doesn't have to get the groceries or the food on the table, unless one works in the kitchen. Then one may come to this without any recommendation from anybody else, that to just sit with the whole thing or be with the whole thing without doing anything is what is demanded by the situation itself. Which is the only thing which will stop the escalation. And there is something in the mind that wants to know what is going on, wants to find out. And just thinking about it, one has found out, just does more of the same. So there's a spark of wondering whether there is a different way of being with what is going on, other than just thinking about it, worrying about it, predicting about it based on the past. And this quiet, still listening will happen all on its own. because everything else is too much. It's seen to be false, causing more of the same. The question of practice has come up several times, and we will devote some time to it. Is there some benefit or purpose in counting? This question has come up several times, in counting inhalation and exhalation, or just exhalation. Actually, the people who have brought it up have experimented with it themselves and have found out things about that. There's no question about the fact that if one starts counting inhalation, exhalation to the extent that one is able to do it, some people have more talent for keeping a concentrated activity like this up than other people. But counting or observing, following the breathing does have a calming influence on the active mind, particularly as one does it in the beginning, but maybe also later. As one person said, it used to slow things down. But then, as this person reported, eventually I found myself in sort of a trance-like calm. And not in touch with the song of the birds, or the motions in the room, the ticking of the radiator. So what does one want to do? Calm and excited body-mind. Maybe one needs to get some sleep and is all upset over something, then maybe trying to count exhalation, inhalation. Maybe that will calm the body-mind down enough to go to sleep. I don't know. It's for all of us to experiment with. But if one really experiments with it, is this really so that the mind closes up in a certain way, in maybe a transparent way? There being some sort of transparent separation. One is in some kind of a bubble. And things take place in this bubble. It feels good. There's some feeling of safety in that. One person that comes to mind right now once called this like being in a holding tank. And how it seemed to be necessary for the mental condition that one was in, just to have some kind of place where one felt held and safe, calm, unthreatened. It doesn't work like this for everyone, particularly if one doesn't have these contemplative talents or hasn't done it long enough to develop them. Because the mind is very untamable. Or it can develop, the brain can develop counting and thinking at the same time, fantasizing while this sort of drab drone counterpoint counting is going on. Then when it's neither here nor there, leave alone the birds, they're not there at all. But sometimes people have mentioned to me, if I start following the breath for a while, then pretty soon the mind will open up and the following of the breath or the counting drops of its own and the mind is open. So, what can I say? People ask me, what do you prescribe here or do you give practices? I do not. It's not part of the way I see this work. It's not part of my function. In a talk or in a meeting, we may together go into something or through something and participate in it. But it doesn't mean now follow this technique. This is what I'm presenting as a technique. Can we approach our problems empty-handed, freshly? There it is. Fear, resistance, distractedness. That's what's often complained about, particularly at the beginning of a retreat. My mind is all over the place. I'm distracted by everything. Which means what? What is distractedness? Is it something just to be wholesale condemned, shoved away, find a practice so that I'm not distracted? Or is it worth looking at? What is it that distracts the mind? Why not go into it? Why not find out about it? Look at it. Be familiar with it. Learn. Then distraction is not a distraction anymore. Then it's just something to look at and wonder about, listen to, as anything else. We find all kinds of skeletons in the closet, in what we have called distraction, things we have, maybe ideas, fantasies, remembrances that we just don't want to look at, bother with, own. It's not me, we think. It's just a distraction. Because in looking at these so-called distracting thoughts, there may emerge something about me that I don't want to be like, because I have images of what I want to be like. Not like that, not distracted by greed or covetousness or sexual feelings about others. So, the image I have of myself, I don't know if we mentioned it at the beginning of the talk, the image I have about myself can be a very strong preventer of looking freely at what goes through the mind. And as long as there is attachment and upholding of this image of me as a proud, or I don't know what all images, there's no end to them we have about ourselves. If I hold on to it, I can't see. I only will look for things that confirm this image and be in constant conflict with myself and others who don't confirm this image, who tell me something different. If that can be seen directly, here, not just believe somebody else, follow someone else, but see it directly here as it's happening, then maybe less and less stock will be put into this image. It will be seen for what it is. A straitjacket, something that does not tell the truth about what I am and what others are.
So then what is the truth about myself? If I disregard the images, I have to look at the distractions and everything else that goes on in this mind and body when I sit alone and as I relate with others. Jealousy coming up, envy, defensiveness, the whole thing. Hurt. Anger. Why do I get hurt? Not,
I have a right to get hurt, or it's only human nature to get hurt, then I can't look. Then I'm again busy with ideas about what I'm like. Why do I get hurt? And I don't mean physically hurt if somebody pokes me or I walk into something with a shin. Oh, that's worth looking at too. Reminds me, I have to tell it. I used to get so angry inwardly. Never showed anger much outwardly. That was taboo, our family. If you did, it was bad. But I would get inwardly angry if I kicked myself, a chair or a table, which happened quite frequently. And after years and years and years of this, there dawned the question, why does this happen? Why do I get angry like this? Not in an enormous philosophical and interesting psychological way, I just wondered about it. Just wondering about it did not change it. It still happened, but I wondered when it happened, why did I get angry? Of course, all kinds of reasons come up, but the reasons coming up also don't prevent this thing from happening again. And then it happened that I hit myself and I didn't get angry. And then I wondered, why didn't I get angry? It was a different state of mind. I didn't do anything. But there's the
table and me and this slight paranoia that all of us carry around. This table has it in for me. There's something like that. With a table, it's funny, but we think like this about people. And they may or may not have it in for us. It may not be true or may be true. But why should I get hurt? Why should I be separate as a target? Have the identity of a target? As something separate from the whole process of living and emoting and or listening. Looking, the energy gathering in this listening and looking and wondering and attending, not as a duty. I don't mean it that way, just it happens. Because we need to find out. And in this state of being, there is no separation from the table, so there is no anger. It hurts. But the hurt is different. The anger adds to the hurt considerably. It sort of messes it up. It messes up a clean hurt. Clean hurt is bearable, but the other becomes unbearable. So one thinks. So we never let a retreat go by without asking, why do we get hurt? If somebody says something, criticizes me, slights me, why do I get hurt? also wondering, do I have to get hurt? Not I mustn't get hurt. That already imposes upon the freedom of looking and listening. At the moment, if that freedom of looking and listening is there at the moment somebody says a slighting remark, it just doesn't arrive. One just hears it and wonders what is going on in oneself or in the person. Does he have something? Is there something I did say that was, or do, that was hurtful to somebody else? Or is he or she in a bad mood and needs to vent it on somebody? That's what we call intelligence functioning in the openness of looking and listening. But when that openness isn't there, then we are the little target, the little separate me that needs to protect itself and maintain its image. And that image, of course, constantly gets hurt or inflated. And we go away from the hurt or fight it, defend it, and walk toward the praise or the flattery because it feels good. And blind in both cases. Does it have to continue blindly? We're doing it all the time, individually, as families and as nations. Telling each other over hurt, over insult, over image. Telling each other uncompromisingly. Because we don't see the people, we see the images. Here in this brain, or wherever it's located. And the image says this person is bad. And when the image says this person is bad, or the group that this person belongs to is bad or inferior or ripe for extermination, when the image says that, then everything that this person does, or members of his or her group do, confirms that image somehow or other. There's something distorting going on in holding to images. The perception is distorted. That's the tricky thing, because one thinks, well, I have to assume they are like that. We don't have to go on with all of that. That's the amazing thing. We can question it, and questioning is already a break in the continuity. Is one ready for that? Because it may threaten one's image, that was one's existence for 10, 20, 30, 50, 70, 80 years, and that of one's forebears. So one has to understand all the dynamics of the image. One has to watch it. That's why there's no need to be discouraged if one watches the image for the 10,000th time. One learns something about it. It comes up, one sees what it does. It becomes clearer and clearer all the time. And the dropping of it can be very quick. And the clearing of it, the clearing of living. One can't do this on faith or on belief. One has to do it out of observing within oneself as it happens in oneself and in each other, in our relationship.
we will end here for today.